Your favorite coffee mug is in pieces on the kitchen floor. You had placed it carefully away from the edge, like you always do. Your partner says, "Well, what did you expect leaving it there?" Or maybe it's just silence when you look for answers to why she broke it. Cold, dismissive silence that says your loss does not even warrant acknowledgement. The damage is not random, it's a deliberate message. What matters to you is expendable here. Maybe the destruction is quieter than thrown plates. Maybe it's your tools get returned damaged. Important documents disappear just when you need them the most. The photograph of your father gets knocked over again and again until the frame splits and you stop putting it back up. Each time you raise it, you get, "You're too attached to stuff. It was an accident. Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" Maybe if you took better care of your things, the blame always lands back on you. You start living in someone else's space, surrounded by someone else's things, walking carefully around your own life so nothing else gets broken, lost, or deemed unsuitable for the home you help pay for. You stop bringing in anything that matters. You stop putting anything on display. You learn to exist without leaving a trace of your presence. This is property interference and damage, a control tactic that uses your belongings to destroy your sense of security, autonomy, and identity. That's what we will cover today. We're going to map how your belongings are treated within an abusive relationship and also practical steps to protect your space and rebuild your security around your things. For those of you who are new here, this is Stand Again, a lived experience platform for male victims of family violence. Abuse is not limited to one gender, but this channel focuses on the male perspective because it is so often dismissed or misunderstood. If this content helps you, please like, subscribe, and also type the words Stand Again into the chat. Those two words might just help another man find his way back to his own space. Property damage and interference is a deliberate control tactic where an abuser destroys, hides, or devalues your belongings. The reason an abuser uses property interference are multiple and deliberate. First, they genuinely do not value your belongings and are offended that your things occupy space in what they consider their home. Second, they use tactical timing to sabotage important moments in your life. For example, your wallet disappears the morning of a job interview, leaving you scrambling in panic as you leave. Third, they use property damage as retaliation for perceived slights or boundary setting. You said no to something yesterday, your favorite shirt gets coffee spilled on it today. Fourth, they aim to condition you to devalue your own possessions so you stop investing meaning in anything. After the third broken mug, you learn that caring about your belongings brings pain, so you train yourself to stop caring. And fifth, they use the targeting of your belongings to isolate you from aspects of your identity, your past, and your autonomy that exists outside their control. For example, damaging the hobby equipment that connects you to your friends. Russell Belk's research on the extended self explains why this tactic is so effective. Possessions function as an extension of self, representing identity, anchoring memory, and signaling belonging. Abusers understand this instinctively and exploit it. When your belongings are attacked, you are being attacked. Abusers maintain plausible deniability through ready made cover stories. The devaluation gets framed as aesthetic preference or "I'm just helping you declutter." The damage gets explained as accidents or your fault for leaving things where they could get broken. The disappearances of your possessions gets blamed on your forgetfulness or your disorganization. These explanations exist to obscure the deliberate nature of what is happening. The cover stories flow in one direction only. When they claim to be decluttering your items for the household good, suggest decluttering theirs. The rage exposes that this was never about the stated reason. The clearest diagnostic signal is asymmetry in how belongings are treated. Your things are damaged, misplaced, criticized, and removed. Their things remain untouched, carefully handled, and prominently displayed. Your preferences about shared spaces gets dismissed. Their preferences dominate every room. Your sentimental items are mocked. Their sentimental items are treated as sacred. This asymmetry reveals whose existence gets priority in the shared space. When men express attachment to items that serve no practical function, like a photograph or a gift or a memento from an important experience, they face mockery, dismissal, or accusations of being overly sentimental. This cultural pattern pushes men to concentrate their emotional investment in functional objects, like tools or work equipment, because those attachments are culturally acceptable. When those functional items are then damaged or sabotaged, the loss cuts deeper because they've been repositories to sentiment that had nowhere else to go. Our socialization towards logical problem solving also creates another blind spot. When something breaks or goes missing, the trained response is immediate. How do I replace this? How do I repair it? How do I solve the problem? This jump to solution bypasses the question of intent on the damage. By moving straight to practical resolution, we often miss the pattern of deliberate targeting of our possessions until many incidences have accumulated and we start to see the pattern. The psychological impact develops gradually but cuts deep. You become hypervigilant about your belongings, constantly scanning for what might be damaged, moved, or go missing. You stop bringing meaningful items into shared spaces, and you stop asserting preferences about how your home looks or feels. But the fracture actually goes deeper than just this hypervigilance. Remember that photograph of your recently deceased father mentioned at the beginning? The one that keeps getting knocked over until the frame splits and you stop putting it back up. This is your father, recently deceased, and that photograph is one of the few tangible connections you have left to him. The sentimental value is enormous, but to protect yourself from the emotional pain of seeing it damaged again and again, you begin telling yourself it's silly to be sentimental over a photo. You convince yourself that caring about it is weakness, that your grief should be more mature than attachment to an object, that self dismissal is protective in the moment but corrosive over time. You're training yourself to devalue what matters to you, doing the abuser's work internally because the external attacks become too painful to bear. This creates a specific kind of identity erosion. You're not just losing the objects themselves, you're losing your permission to care about them. You're losing your right to attach meaning to things. You're losing the internal sense that your connections and history deserve protection and respect. When you can't trust that your belongings will be safe, when your physical environment reflects someone else's control rather than your own preferences, when the basic stability of your material world becomes unreliable, the stress extends into every aspect of your daily existence. You begin living as a guest within your own life. For men who do eventually recognize this pattern, there's often a secondary layer of shame. Realizing you've spent months or years telling yourself your attachments were foolish, that your sentiment was weakness, that your distress over losses was disproportionate, and then discovering those losses were deliberate, that your attachments were normal, that your distress was appropriate, it creates a reckoning with your own participation in dismissing what mattered to you. Recovery requires not just restoring the material world, but restoring your internal permission to value your world. Now let's look at the three ways an abuser uses property interference and property damage to control and destabilize you. The first way is through possession devaluation. Possession devaluation involves the critique, ridicule, and removal of your belongings from shared spaces until your home no longer reflects who you are. The process begins with comments that carry contempt rather than curiosity. A visible sneer at something that you put up for display. Seriously? You like that? A loud sigh when you bring something home. The message is about your judgment being fundamentally wrong. The abuser presents this as fact, not preference. That looks terrible. Why would you keep this junk? We're not having that crap on display. The tone is verdict, not negotiation. Your record collection gets dismissed as outdated. Your books criticized as pretentious. Family photos deemed unsuitable for display. The removal process follows the criticism. Items that survive the initial ridicule start disappearing from visible locations. Your framed photographs move from the hallway to a drawer. Furniture you selected gets replaced without consultation. When you ask where something went, you hear, "It was cluttering the space. I put it somewhere better. It just didn't fit with the aesthetic." The phrasing is always about improvement, reorganization, or even upgrading, never about discarding your possessions without asking. The gradual erasure happens slowly enough that you might not notice the cumulative impact until you look around one day and realize nothing reflects who you are. Your attempts to maintain space for your belongings are met with escalating hostility framed as reasonableness. You're being selfish, wanting your clutter everywhere. I have to look at this space myself too. Why do you care more about this stuff than you do about me? Your preferences get reframed as evidence of your character flaws. Eventually, it becomes easier to store your things away or to not bring them home at all than to endure the constant attacks masked as aesthetic disagreement. The tactic extends beyond decorative items into practical belongings. Your clothes might get criticized as embarrassing. You're not wearing that out with me. Hobby equipment gets stored somewhere increasingly inaccessible, with justifications about space management or organization. Items with sentimental value, like family heirlooms or gifts from friends or mementos with important experiences, might be repurposed for degrading uses. Your grandfather's watch box becomes garage storage. The mug your best friend gave you will hold screws in the shed. The degradation is deliberate. These items had meaning, now they have utility that erases that meaning. When you object, the response involves aggressive minimization and reversal of blame. It's just stuff. Why are you so materialistic? I'm trying to make our home look decent, and you are having a tantrum. Or you care more about objects than about our relationship. Your emotional attachment to your belongings is weaponized as evidence of your dysfunction, while their need to control every visible aspect of the environment is presented as normal, reasonable adult behavior. The next is disrespectful damage. Disrespectful damage involves careless, avoidable destruction of your belongings through accidents that consistently target your possessions while leaving your partner's items unharmed. The pattern reveals itself through targeting. The book your father gave you ends up with coffee stains. Your work shirt gets damaged in the wash. Tools are returned broken after being borrowed without permission. Yet your partner's belongings never suffer these accidents. Their book collection stays pristine. Their clothes emerge from the same washing machine undamaged. Their tools, when you've borrowed them, must be returned in perfect condition or face dire consequences. When you raise it, you get deflection and blame. It was an accident. These things happen. Maybe you shouldn't have such delicate things. I didn't know that was special to you. But the double standard is clear. Their things stay safe, yours get damaged. The targeting focuses on items that hold particular meaning or practical importance. The guitar you've had since adolescence gets knocked over. I didn't see it there. Oops. Each incident, viewed alone, might seem like simple carelessness, yet together they form a pattern of disrespect. The damage often happens when you've asserted a boundary or made independent plans or shown attention to something outside the relationship. The timing is rarely coincidental. Your partner's belongings receive markedly different treatment. They handle their own items with obvious care, attention, and precision. Pointing out the double standard typically results in gaslighting and blame reversal. I'm just more careful with my things. Your stuff is just old and cheap and poorly made. You're paranoid. Not everything is about you. The suggestion that the damage might be deliberate is met with outrage. I can't believe you would accuse me of that. You think I'd deliberately damage your stuff. The defensive reaction is designed to make you feel guilty for noticing the pattern. When confrontation happens, the damage is minimized as unimportant or easily replaceable. It's just a thing. Buy another one. Why are you so upset over this? Your emotional reaction to loss is pathologized as overattachment or unreasonable sensitivity. You're being dramatic, or it's not healthy to be so attached to objects. Or you might even hear, I'm worried about how materialistic you are becoming. The focus shifts from accountability for the damage to criticism of your response to it. And then you end up defending your right to care about your belongings rather than addressing the fact that your belongings are being destroyed. For men, this dynamic intersects with cultural messages about materialism and emotional attachment. We hear that real men don't get attached to things. They don't cry over broken possessions. They don't make a fuss about material items. So, men experiencing property damage often feel they shouldn't care about mere objects. The abuser exploits this. Your hurt is evidence of weakness. Your attachment is evidence of character flaw. Your desire for respect towards your belongings is evidence you are petty and small minded. The pattern reinforces broader power dynamics by establishing that your needs, your property, and your emotional responses are less important than your partner's. Each damaged item becomes evidence that your world is disposable. Your preferences are irrelevant. Your emotional investment in your belongings is unreasonable. The psychological effect is learned disposability. You begin treating your own possessions with less care, internalizing the message that they don't deserve protection. You start storing important items away where they can't be damaged, avoiding bringing anything meaningful into a shared space. You're losing the ability to surround yourself with things that reflect who you are and what you value. Your living space becomes a minefield where anything you care about is vulnerable to a so called accident you've learned to expect, but never quite predict. The last way we're going to explore on how an abuser interferes with your property is disappearing acts. Disappearing acts involve strategic hiding or displacement of essential items at crucial moments. Keys vanish before job interviews, documents disappear right before deadlines, medication goes missing during stressful periods. The timing exposes the deliberate nature. Critical moments create maximum disruption. The tactic operates through disruption and gaslighting. You know you left your keys on the hook by the door. That's where you've always left them. You checked your wallet before bed and your driver's license was there. You put the important document in the folder on your desk because you needed it tomorrow. But when you go to retrieve these items, they're gone. When you confront it, you get denial and deflection. I haven't seen them. Did you check where you left them? You probably misplaced them. Maybe you should be more organized. And the suggestion that they might know where your items are is met with offense. Are you accusing me of something? Why would I do that? That's insulting. The emotional reaction becomes part of the control mechanism. Panic when you can't find your keys, frustration as you tear the house apart looking for your missing documents, self doubt as you question whether you really put things where you remember putting them. The abuser observes this emotional chaos with detachment or even thinly veiled satisfaction. Calm down, they might say. Getting upset isn't helping. Maybe if you were more organized. They position themselves as the reasonable one while you spiral. When items disappear, their location often defies logical explanation. Keys show up in the bathroom cabinet, your wallet appears in the garage. The document you need is found in the kitchen drawer under utensils. Things show up in places you're certain you already searched, in locations that make no sense given how you use them, or sitting in plain sight where you could have sworn they weren't before. When you find the missing item, the response from your abuser is never, I moved it. The response is instead, see, it was there all along. You did not look properly. Maybe you put it there and you forgot. This pattern is designed to make you doubt your own memory and perception, eroding confidence in your basic cognitive abilities. The message is you can't trust yourself. You're becoming forgetful, unreliable, incompetent. Your abuser's response to these incidences follow predictable patterns of deflection and blame shifting. They express mock concern about your stress levels. You might hear things like, I'm worried about how scattered you've become. They suggest you're becoming forgetful or disorganized, or you hear, this keeps happening. Maybe you should see someone about your memory. They offer to help you develop better systems for keeping track of things, positioning themselves as the solution to the problem they are creating. You might hear, why don't I hold on to your important documents so this doesn't happen again? Or maybe I should keep track of your keys for you. The narrative that emerges portrays you as incredibly unreliable and them as patiently supportive. In reality, they're engineering your dependence while destroying your confidence. The tactic also creates practical dependency on your abuser. When your keys go missing, you need their help to get where you are going. You take their car, or they drive you, or you borrow their keys. When important documents disappear, you rely on their assistance to find alternatives or their documents to substitute. When tools or equipment vanish, you depend on their resources to complete tasks. They become the solution to crises they have created. Each rescue reinforces the narrative that they're helping you cope with your increasing incompetence, when in reality, they are sabotaging your independence and engineering situations where you need them. The psychological effect is self doubt about your memory and your competence. You begin to question your own organizational abilities and even your basic cognitive function. You never quite feel prepared, never quite confident, never quite certain that you can rely on yourself. That's exactly the state the abuser wants you in: destabilized, dependent, and doubting your own competence. When you recognize these patterns in your life, three practical tools can help you protect what matters and maintain your grip on reality. The first is safekeeping of irreplaceable items. Move items you cannot replace out of the danger zone before they are destroyed. This means getting them physically out of the shared space. Identify what is truly irreplaceable, like photographs of deceased loved ones, family heirlooms, gifts with deep sentimental meaning, or documents you cannot obtain again. These items deserve protection before they become casualties. Choose one trusted person who can hold these items for you, like a family member or a close friend, or even a colleague who understands your situation. Frame it simply: I need you to keep these safe for me for a while. You don't owe anybody elaborate explanations. If you don't have a trusted person, consider other secure locations like a safety deposit box at a bank or a small storage unit, or even a locked drawer at work. The key is physical separation from the space where damage occurs. For documents, make copies or take clear photos and store them in a private cloud account your partner does not have access to. Keep the originals somewhere safe. This tool acknowledges a hard truth. You cannot prevent the damage while you remain in the environment, but you can prevent the loss of what cannot be replaced. The second tool is reality anchoring against gaslighting. When you're being told you're forgetful, disorganized, or imagining patterns, you need external anchors to reality. Keep a simple private record. When items go missing or get damaged, make a brief note with a date, like keys missing, found in bathroom cabinet, or third coffee mug broken this month. Store this in a private notes app on your phone or email it to yourself with a clear subject line. The goal is a time stamped record, not elaborate documentation. The record serves two purposes. First, it helps you see patterns clearly when gaslighting tries to convince you incidences are isolated. Second, it provides evidence to yourself that your memory is reliable. When you're told that never happens, you can privately review your notes and confirm that it does. The third tool is reattaching meaning to your possessions. Property damage trains you to stop caring about your things because caring hurts. Undoing that means giving yourself permission to care again. Start with a single item. Pick something meaningful to you that you hid away or you stopped valuing, whether it's a photo of your father or the tools your grandfather gave you. Put it somewhere you can see it. And if you do catch yourself thinking it's just a thing, don't be weak. Recognize that that is your abuser's voice in your head, not yours. Your attachment to objects that represent your history is not weakness, it's normal. Men are allowed to value things that matter to them. You don't need to justify why something is important to you. If items were destroyed, let yourself acknowledge the loss. You're not being materialistic by caring that something meaningful was damaged. When someone deliberately breaks something that matters to you, your anger and grief are appropriate responses. When you're in a position to do so, replace one item that was destroyed. Not because the object itself can be replaced, but because doing so says, what I value deserves protection, and I am reclaiming my right to have things that matter to me. To every man who recognizes his experiences in these patterns, your belongings mattered, your space mattered. Your right to feel secure in your physical environment is real and valid. You were not overreacting when you felt violated by the broken mug, the missing keys, or the damaged photograph. You were not being materialistic when you grieved meaningful losses. You were not being paranoid when you noticed the patterns. Your responses were appropriate to what was done to you. You have the right to live in a space where your things are safe, where your preferences matter, where your identity can exist without permission or apology. That's not asking too much. That's asking for basic human dignity, and you deserve nothing less. This is Stand Again, lived experience platform for male survivors of family violence. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Your voice might just help another man find his. If you're looking for one on one support, you can book coaching with a member of the Stand Again team. Simply visit standagain.com.au, where you will also find grounded information on surviving and recovering from family violence as a man. As always, remember that no matter how many times you've been knocked down, you can stand again.